Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Breakwater. I'm Lyndsay, and with me today is Ed, and I'm super excited for this conversation today because it kind of relates to my job specifically. So that's just something I'm excited about.
It does. I think this is going to be really easy for you because it's something that you do, like you say, part of your job. But I think it's way more than that, Lyndsay. I would like, if you don't mind, I want to jump in because you've been talking a lot about young adult ministry, and you've been meeting every other week, and you do a lot of communication. And so we're going to talk today a little bit more about how you're communicating with young adult, which is separate from the church, the institutional church. But it's also because the church is there. And also, how do you communicate within the church? And so I think it's going to be a great discussion today. And I think it's going to be actually really helpful. And I think anybody who's in communication, I really hope they tune in because it really matters how we communicate. So let's jump into young adult ministry. So,
well, actually, before we go there, I kind of want to explain why we're doing this podcast today, just because I think that will lay some groundwork for people. I think it's kind of two-pronged. One is, so I'm the communications director for our church and then its ministries. And so it's like whenever I share this information with people of like, oh, what do you do for a job? It's like communications for a church. And if it is somebody who is in a church, their response is always like, oh, I wish we had a communications person in our church. That would just solve everything because we would have more people in our small groups. We would have more people in the church. And it's like they look to this job as like the thing that is going to like increase attendance. But it is a lot more than that. And I think the motivation behind it is a little bit different, where it's like I'm not doing my job to increase the attendance of the church, but a lot of what I do is for the community. And so that's one side of it. But also I think where this all launched from is I was talking with a friend, and we were visiting a church, and it was her church, and we were in the bathrooms, and they had like signs on the back of the bathroom stalls, and it was like, all right, here are our upcoming women's events. And it was like, there was like a s'more, like campfire and s'more thing. There was like a flower making party and like a tea party or something like that. And those were 3 different months happening, upcoming. And I went and talked to her, like we exited the bathroom. I was like, okay, like Hannah, like that's what you wanted to do. Like you're really excited that like, I remember you saying you wanted to start doing events for the community. Is that what these events are? And she was like, well, like I was like kind of hoping that they would be. But it seems like I've noticed the only place that these are being marketed or advertised are like on the bathroom stalls. And so it's just been really cool hearing her story and how she's been thinking through all of these things through a different lens, because she's starting to ask questions and like notice things like, like I wonder if the church has communicated to anybody else in the community, because it seems like it has only been communicated internally. So is it really for the community? Is it just for the church? I think they would welcome people from the community, but I don't think they have that lens of like, how do we actually do that? So she had actually asked, she was like, it would be awesome if you guys did a podcast to kind of help churches like put that lens on and like think about how they can reach their communities through the events that they're having.
Let me take you back a little bit further, because I remember you telling the story of when you were meeting with a group of communicators, and they were asking like what you did, like, oh, you work on the bulletin, or you work on, remember that? And maybe reference that first, because they were all a little surprised about what you got to work on communication versus what most people in churches communicate. So they, like you said, like they were working on bulletins and like getting stuff ready for Sunday mornings, or like I think it was Easter or Ash Wednesday coming up at the time. And we were meeting with this group, and I was super excited about it because there were a couple like obstacles that I was facing. I'm like, awesome, like maybe like people who have been in this role longer than I have can like offer some advice. And so I think at the time I was looking at
like finding a funding platform that was going to allow people from like all over to be able to kind of like a GoFundMe thing, but like looking for free resources, and not having to pay for a platform. But I was just like asking like, okay, we're trying to find a funding platform for all of these ministries. Like we have a grocery store, the Pints, like job creation. We want it to be a space where they can all interact. And like after I explained it, it was just like crickets. Literally, like no one said a single word. And like everyone looked at me and then they looked at each other and just kept talking. And I was ignored. And it was one of the weirdest experiences in my life. Yeah.
Why do you think that was first?
Well, I mean, there wasn't anything that they could really offer. Like they haven't experienced that in their jobs. A majority based on that conversation that I'm hearing, our communicators' jobs in churches are getting things ready like bulletins, newsletters, Sunday morning pamphlets, slides, emails. And so they're doing a lot of stuff internally. And I just remember like hearing one of the communicators in that meeting, like I was like, what's been like the greatest victory in your job? And she had explained that she had like fought for a year, that on Ash Wednesday, she was like, we got them to move from putting the ashes on someone's forehead at the beginning of service to the end of the service. And it was like, I don't want to like diminish that win, but I was like, I was just very thankful that those were not like the battles that I had to fight within my job.
Yeah, you're looking at a whole different audience. I mean, when you think about young adult ministry, let's start with the who. Who are you communicating to?
So for young adult ministry specifically, if this is the first podcast you're listening to, we have talked about this in the past, but we started up a young adults ministry for just young adults in the community. It's not affiliated with a church. We're not meeting in a church. Like it was really important that it was in a neutral space and it was for the unbeliever and the believer, just anybody to intersect in. And so I think when we started to look at the who, it was important to also assess like how, and so how we would communicate to them. And so that demographic is on social media for everything. So it was pretty easy in that sense. We didn't have to think of like several different avenues for things, but we just created 2 social media pages, Instagram and Facebook. And then we made a video and threw it out there into a bunch of different groups on Facebook is what they're called. That kind of, it really like reached the masses. And within a day we had like 100 people joining the group.
So let me ask a follow-up. So it was really it was for the community and it was targeting the community.
Yeah.
Didn't matter, believer, not believer, churchgoer, not churchgoer. Was there any thought put into how do we invite also the church to come along? Was there any consideration there?
From me, no. Mostly because I guess my line of thinking there's already like a couple groups in Midland that are affiliated with a church, like a young adults group. I will say like that age range is typically neglected in churches. And so I don't want to say every single church has like a thriving young adults ministry, but like for what a believer would be looking for within a community group, you could probably find it at a church, if not start it within your church. But there's not really a space in Midland, at least, for young adults to just connect with one another. So I wasn't too worried about making sure the believers would come along. Like I didn't feel like I had to like really pull teeth there. Like it felt like that was something that believers would already want to be a part of. It was mostly trying to reach those outside of the church.
So just to clarify, there was no communication to the church, even saying, hey, did you know this is going on?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's just interesting. Because I know some people might go, what do you mean? You didn't even invite the church? No.
But I mean, to be fair, we're also not affiliated with any church. So this is very, very different from if we're having the conversation about the churches having breakfast with Santa for the community. And in that case, it's for the community and we invite the church to participate. So these are 2 very different strategies.
So let's transition
here.
there a little bit. I think this is a great transition point. So let's that's even what you just said is not normal. I mean, normal, it's the church is doing it for the church. And then a lot of times we'll just say, oh, invite your friends, is typically the way that we do it. But repeat what you just said, like Breakfast with Santa is for who?
It's for the community. And we invite the church to participate and especially like serve, because we put it on to serve the community. So it's an opportunity for the church to step in and serve in that way too.
So who is the community?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you communicate differently to the community than you do to the church?
So one, the church is pretty easy. Like it's kind of up to them to like look at things like newsletter. There's a lot of internal communications that I feel like churches already understand pretty well. You probably know how to communicate to your congregation. But I think when you're starting to think of doing something for the community, as a church together serving the community, you can't just send out a newsletter and hope that it reaches people and they're inviting your friends. I think you have to get a lot more strategic. I'll talk very practically now. So like Breakfast with Santa, typically what I would do is like you create several different versions of graphics and sizes for like flyers. You could take like full page flyers and go around to all of the different businesses, coffee shops, bowling alleys. Like Breakfast with Santa for us it's a family event. So you have to think like, where are families going? So it's like, yeah, you think of all the recreational leisure stuff in town. It's like I said, you got coffee shops, you got restaurants, you got bowling alleys, movie theaters. Just look up, do a basic Google search of every business and then go and drop those off there. I think from like a media standpoint, there are groups on Facebook that are like for Midland. There's like Ask Midland. There's this group called Midland Complains. There's another group.
Really?
Oh, there's so many. You can just go to the groups tab on your Facebook page and search local groups. There are yard sale groups. This is not an avenue you would use to market this. Like you can't just like blindly shoot stuff out there either. Like you have to like be strategic in the groups you're choosing. But yeah, there's like Midland Informed. There's Ask Midland. There's Rooted in the Creek is what it's called. And that's like a little bit more specific to the like countryside of Midland. But all of these people are in these groups, like thousands of people that a lot of them are just used to complain or gossip, but there are a lot of like good things that go out there too, of things that people are just looking for. So it's like joining those and throwing it out there like, hey, community, like you're invited. This is a free event. There will be like, you want to explain and give enough information, but not overwhelm people with information. You don't want to like overpromise what your event is going to have either. So you want to give them like a window into that ministry or that event that you're doing. So that's one avenue. A lot of it can be also like word of mouth. So we have strategically placed ourselves in meetings that happen throughout Midland. So we have like a community faith-based assistance meeting that happens where leaders from churches and nonprofits will come together once a month. We attend those. We're at like Wake Up Midland, which is like a Midland Business Alliance group. So there are several different groups within your community, even thinking of things like Chamber of Commerce and I don't know, we also have like a young adults professional group in Midland. So there are groups like that I think as a church, you don't think like, why would I join those? Because I'm not a business. But if you start to do stuff that is going to serve your community and benefit your community and benefit employees of businesses and benefit clients of nonprofits that are serving those clients, like you are going to want to start intersecting with those business leaders and entrepreneurs in your community to make them aware of how you can partner with them. Like, don't silo yourself as a church to communicate only internally, but like think about all of those that you can reach through different connections too.
I wonder how people are receiving what you're saying, because I wonder if that has never crossed their mind. Because 99%, or I'm just throwing that number out, is all for the church and informing the church. Here's what we're doing. Come, bring a friend.
And it's to no fault of the people doing the communicating, because it's just, I've even stepping into this job, like I have never thought to do those things. I've never thought to also like contact the news or the local radio stations or like TV5, like for, media TV network stuff. Like I've never thought to just reach out and be like, hey, would you do a story on this upcoming golf outing we have, or this concert for a cause we're doing, or like a variety of things that you might be putting on. Like that's not a natural thought process. So it's to no fault of the communicator. It's like, that's just what's natural. Like, oh, we want a successful event. Let's invite the church and see what happens.
I think you mentioned two of them, two events that were recent. I mean, golf outing is today.
Yep.
We just both came from that this morning. It's going to benefit one of our community ministries, the Bridge Food Center. But there's over 100 golfers. And many of them are coming from where? Where do you think?
The community.
Yeah, they are coming from the community.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot of them.
It's for the community. It's by the community. People came from Traverse City. I mean, they came from long ways just to golf today. So I found that kind of interesting, but it's just, I think because the way that maybe we operate, that's a normalcy for us. Like, let's have a great golf outing. It's going to benefit a ministry, but let's really do it for the community. And then we also inform the church. So explain, kind of bridge that for us now. So a church who's listened to this thinking, oh my goodness, we've never thought about having a community event for the community. We're thinking about it more from our church standpoint. So if they would maybe make that transition right now, just go like, oh, what could our church do in the community for the community that might benefit the community that the church could lead? How do you communicate that to the church without the church feeling like it's their event?
Without the church feeling like it's their event, but that it's for the community?
It's for the community. Because isn't there a little bit of a rub there sometimes?
Yeah, I think that is a culture shift in your church that you're going to have to make. I think this is, I feel like, more your job than it is my job. I feel like my job is mostly like reaching out to the community, and you and I like kind of work together where you cast a lot of vision on Sunday mornings. And then I kind of like piggyback off of that in like newsletters and in like social media. And I feel like where I see the church getting excited about that is more so in like the storytelling that comes from it. And like it takes some groundwork to like build up that thing and build credibility of like, this is a good thing. And this is actually reaching people outside of your church. And if you can give like a window into why it is what we're doing, like that will inspire too. So it's like, even like posting pictures and stories from all of the community ministries, like once a month, I ask all of the community ministry managers to tell me like what happened in your world in the last month. Do you have any pictures? Do you have any stories? Do you have any metrics? Because I think if the church is not actively involved in them, like every single day, naturally, because they're working their full-time jobs, it's like they're not seeing all of the impact moments that happen. And so if you can communicate the why you're doing it, maybe from the front end, if you don't have those pictures or like videos or testimonies or metrics yet, it's like, it's really important that you cast vision for why you're doing it. And for us, it's like reaching the one, going after the one who wouldn't typically ever walk into your building. And we do that by creating environments for life transformation.
I really enjoyed the concert for a cause.
Yeah.
And for those who may not know what that is Gateway is a healthcare clinic, Gateway Family and Urgent Care. And we wanted to bring awareness in the community. And so I think we might have touched on this previously, but we just had it a couple of weeks ago. We invited the community. We got a lot of sponsors. I mean, I had a real joy of just going and meeting with CEOs of companies, of corporations, just to say, would you stand with us and would you be part of making the unaffordable affordable and helping healthcare to be available to everybody. But what I was going to share about it, and this is the thing, as you were talking, I was just reflecting on it. There weren't that many people from the church who actually came to the event. If you look at the people who came to the event, it was hundreds of people in the community. But the thing that really was exciting for me is that all the people that were serving, we had over 100 people that were volunteering.
Yeah.
the vast majority of them was the church. And I think that was a really
awesome.
classic example of the church showed up to serve, but the community is the one that benefited. And then the church not only was able to serve the community in that way, but then the community, while we were there, I said, hey, take a look. There's Gateway right there. And everybody turned their head to see where Gateway was because they didn't know what Gateway was or where it was. And so we helped them to become aware, like, this is the place where great things happen and people get affordable health care.
Yeah.
But it was a great dynamic of here's the church serving, the community's benefiting. And then we had amazing bands that came.
It was incredible. Yeah. But I want to make this very practical for churches that, like, they don't have a healthcare clinic, they don't have a grocery store. So it's like, let's, I think, talk more about like events that they might be doing. I was having a thought earlier of like what that could specifically look like. I don't know if we want to run with like just breakfast with Santa or like things like that, or what.
I think it could be even something simple. I mean, like a pancake breakfast or breakfast. I just went to a breakfast just recently and at the air show, or the airport. That was really kind of fun just to go to the airport and actually flew with your brother.
Yeah.
That was amazing, flying a small plane. But I think that's a really good example of the community coming together to support something. But churches could do something very similar. Like, what is a cause in the community? And there's a lot of causes in the community. But this would be a great example of the church saying, hey, why don't we be the sponsor for a breakfast, not necessarily at the church, in the community, and let everybody know that this is going to benefit somebody else in the community for something that the church believes in. And so the church could be the one to say, let's organize it, let's support it, let's be behind it, let's serve for it, but let's invite everybody in the community because the community benefits from it. That would be a really simple, missional, easy to do, and like at the Concert for a Cause, nobody publicly ever heard our church name. That just wasn't important.
Yeah, right. So can we run with a specific example? I'm kind of thinking of like our conversation from the other night. We had a group of people come up for like a Beyond the Breakwater workshop, and they were talking about diapers. Like, can we run with that of like, let's say like we're doing a diaper drive and we want it to be for the community, to benefit the community. I don't know the specifics of their event, so now I'm just using it and we can spiral from here.
I think I'd like to hold off on the conversation about where you're going into our next podcast, because we're going to really highlight that particular thing and just some of the challenges that churches go. So let's bring it back a little bit to how do we communicate? So you as a communicator, I understand, like, I would maybe in my role cast the vision for what we're doing, but then how do you communicate to the church for a community event?
I would just do it in like a newsletter and probably still social media, but like the how or the strategy being like, hey, we're doing this thing for the community. Like, this is a way for you to give purpose to like your time and your gifts and like intersect with those who wouldn't otherwise come to your church. I think it's been like pretty easy to bring them along in those things. I think they jump on it when they do have the time to serve and it's on a day that they're able to make it. So yeah, those streams I think are already in place for a lot of churches, correct? Would you say?
Yeah, I think so. But what I'm also hearing you say, Lyndsay, is that there's two different communications now that has to take place. So you've got a communication to the church using the avenues that you're communicating a message to the church that they're invited to come and serve.
So let's talk about the car show, right?
It's a great example.
Okay, so we have a car show coming up that is hosted by His Hands Auto, one of our community ministries, but it's on site of the church, sponsored by one of our faith family members and her family. And so the invitation has been to the church in newsletters and in Sunday morning slides and social media of just saying like, save the date, like this is what's happening, like help us spread the word. Like that's another like major one, is like asking for the church to help spread it. So it's kind of, I'm going to jump back and forth between these two sides. So like in inviting the community, it's like from the Facebook pages I've made like the graphics and there's a lot more information like, hey, this is something that's being hosted. You're invited. It's open to the community. Lunch is free. Registration is free. These are the judging criteria. These are all of the categories you can win prizes in, whatever. And then you can also like make a Facebook event. So that was something that I did. That typically stirs up a lot more traffic as well. And it's an easy way for people to share and help get the word out. And then also, like I shared earlier, sharing it with all of these groups on Facebook. And so now jumping back to the church side of things, in the newsletter, you could say like, this is our Facebook page linked here. Like click on this on your personal page and go help share it to your whole network of people. So there are ways that you can utilize your faith family as a stream of a communication as well in reaching the community and just inviting them for the day of like, this is what is coming, come be a part of it.
It seems very natural for you. I wonder how natural it is for others. Because if we start with a lot of activities that churches are doing for themselves and then just invite somebody, there may not, one of those pieces are missing. But you just really had almost like a dual strategy, like how do we strategize to the church and what are we asking the church to actually do? And then how do we communicate to the community itself?
I think even like being really specific with the church and not just having it be a, hey, this is what's happening, come along, but you have to try to create ownership within the church as well so that they don't feel like, okay, this is an event that already exists and it's happening and we're just a tag along. But it's like in order to engage them and like have them realize like this is your DNA. Like this is not just something, a church that you come to on Sundays and then you check out, but like this is part of your like walk with Christ is to engage with the community, serve, to get involved. And so I think part of that has been like for example, the golf outing that we have today in the communication that went out on yesterday, it was like, hey, it has been a goal that we have 100 golfers at this event. We have 99. Can you get one more person to sign up for this thing? Or like we have a women's conference coming up. It's like our goal is to see this building absolutely packed. Like, can you help make that happen? So rather than just, hey, we have a women's event, come. It's like we have this thing and these are our specific goals. Or we're having this car show. We would love to have 50 cars registered. So far we have this many, and like keep giving like progress updates to the church as you're getting closer to that event so that you're not just, throwing them a fishing line and reeling them in, but like you're a part of this. Yeah. See what you just did. See how many people you just invited this last week. This is how much we're at now.
If we overlay this with the model, I think it's really kind of interesting. I was doing that while you were talking because is the event in the harbor? Because if the event is in the harbor, I wonder how many people in the community are going to come into the harbor to go into the church to do some kind of an activity there. Or is the event out in the community? Because if it's out beyond the breakwater, then you've got a communication to everybody beyond the breakwater who might be very interested in that, but you're also inviting the church to go beyond the breakwater with you. And share this, because if they share that, they're sharing it with their friends that are outside the breakwater. I think it's a really interesting strategy that you have to determine, is this activity a harbor activity or is this activity a beyond the breakwater activity?
Yeah. And it's even like, I'm just imagining this picture of like how we talk about on weekdays, you go out and you take the boat beyond the breakwater and you come back on Sundays and you celebrate together and you refuel and you recharge and then you go back out. But it's like, I see it too of like, okay, everybody go disperse, go out there, and then coming back and you'd be like, okay, I got that person over there. They know about it. Okay, that person over there. Yep, I touch base over there. Okay, great. When we leave here, game plan is you go over there, I'll go over here. Like let's all be on mission. And I think treating each interaction, like we're going to jump into this in the next podcast, but it's like all of these events are not void of God. Like because you are a believer and you have Christ within you, it's like you can go out there inviting people to just a fun event that is for them and for their benefit, and knowing that like, and resting and trusting that like the Lord will use the mundane things to speak to people.
I think that's a great segue into our next podcast, because we're going to really take some of those things that you just highlighted, and we're going to really zero in on them and just highlight them. So, okay, if you had one thing, so let's say somebody who's listening and they're maybe writing notes and they're trying to get their arms around it. What would be one thing that you would say? What's one takeaway for somebody who's in communication or somebody in the church who thought, wow, I never thought about how to communicate this? What would you tell them?
I think really think about who your event is for, and start to understand that person. Because I think once you understand the person in mind that you are trying to reach, it changes how you communicate to them and where you think to go to intersect with them. And I think as church communicators, you're thinking of the people in the pews, but like start thinking about like someone very personal to you, like a neighbor, a coworker. Think about all the places that they go. Think about the time of day that they're on their phones. Like that's something that is always in the back of my mind when I'm like posting stuff or sending messages. It's like, okay, this one person, this friend of mine who I know is not a believer, but I would love it if she came. It's like, I know she wakes up first thing at 6:30 in the morning and looks at her phone. So I'm going to post something at 6:30 in the morning, or like, I know that she goes to this coffee shop at this day. Like I'm going to go put a flyer there. So like think very personally about the people that you know who don't know Christ, and any way that you would go about inviting them.
Awesome.
Do that.
Thanks, Lyndsay. We'll see everybody next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.